For someone who draws a not insubstantial part of their identity from Star Wars, these last few years have been frustrating. On one hand, we could never have dreamt of a future in which the new Star Wars would be the factory setting. Those who grew up with the original films, when the only new content between the movies were the stories they may have enacted with action figures. Old Obi-Wan refers to the Clone Wars as the dark times, but the post-Return of the Jedi years were equally bleak. Back then, we seized upon the mere rumor of new films with the greedy appetite of a starved Hutt, and we lived in silent fear that there would never be any more. So it still boggles our mind whenever we sit to watch the newest episode of Star Wars, as though it was Modern Family or Matlock, and not the great cinematic love of my life. We've had Star Wars on TV before, but animated shows, good as they are, always feel less special. We still get a rush watching live-action Star Wars. It somehow looks just as good as the films, like Pinch Me, Is This Real? Unfortunately, it's very much a "it was the best of times, it was the worst of times" scenario. We are not complaining here, but just telling the truth. There is a loud, stupid, vile subset of fans who can't deal with women wielding lightsabers, being heroes, or basically existing. This is not that. The best part of Ahsoka is that it's almost exclusively female. As many women would say as they watched, it's nice to see a bunch of women as the main characters. Even better, it's not a token representation but arises from the simple fact that women are at the heart of the story. Imagine that. The only male characters of any note are Baylan Skoll, Ray Stevenson, who is exceptional as a Dark Jedi or Sith, and refreshingly is in all one note with his hatred, and the droid Huyang, David Tennant. We don't know if the droid really counts. It has a man's voice and unearned confidence. But none of the dangly bits. We'll call it 1.5 men. The Star Wars TV shows have reached a point that was passed by the Marvel superhero series a while ago. Franchise fans still thirstily slurp down every new one in full, but casual viewers no longer have room in their schedules to unquestioningly commit. After an opening double bill introducing us to Ahsoka Tano's Rosario Dawson, New Adventures, we don't really know. Ahsoka has plenty of flickers of what made Andor and the early Mandalorian such a ride, but it suffers from the same syndrome that makes bad Star Wars bad. It's so in awe of franchise lore, it keeps taking our interest for granted. Our heroine is a former apprentice to Anakin Skywalker, the man who became Darth Vader, who hasn't followed her master to the dark side. Although exactly who Ahsoka is can be hard to pin down, which isn't ideal for a lead character. She's a sort of mentor or vigilante or fixer. She cuts a calm but stern figure in an era of fragile progress. The monstrous galactic empire has fallen, but fears of its imminent revival are well-founded. Ahsoka's quest is to find and neutralize Grand Admiral Thrawn, an exiled Empire stalwart, and she's learned that an arcane map could reveal his hiding place. When two malign mercenaries, who seem to be using Jedi-like powers for nefarious ends, also show an interest in the map, a race is on. But it's not a race in which anyone moves fast. Ahsoka is set in a galaxy so far away that it is yet to receive word of the old screenwriting maxim about starting a scene late and leaving it early. Take, for instance, the sequence where Ahsoka searches an abandoned underground hub on a desolate planet. Like everything else of the show, this dusty, creaky lair is sumptuously designed, and there are pleasing Indiana Jones vibes as secret trapdoors are opened. Artifacts are found hidden in the sand, and stone obelisks are twisted into just the right position to awaken their mysterious power and spring them open. But it all happens at such a measured pace that if you haven't come to the show primed to enjoy every little thing Ahsoka does, enthusiasts have spent more than a decade watching the character develop in the animated series Clone Wars and Rebels. You might wonder why you just had to spend several minutes watching a woman find a map. Eventually, despite a lot of gazing at admittedly impressive CGI backgrounds and plenty more scenes where people walk around for a bit before they do anything, a gang emerges. Ahsoka's need for help in decoding the map leads her to take a risk on her talented but unstable former prodigy, Sabine Wren, Nadish of Leeward Izzo. More reliable assistance comes from Hera Syndulla, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, a general in the benign New Republic. The potential in this all-female trio is for a nuanced, character-driven take on space capers, as the maternal Ahsoka and the auntly Hera try to nurture Sabine's wild warrior talents. Although Ahsoka is a little too mysterious, she sometimes has the air of a sitcom mom, folding her arms in nude exasperation at the foolishness around her. And Hera's main discernible trait so far is that she has a green face. The dynamic is there. Not that the show foregoes spectacular action. Sabine's impulsiveness means that a hoverbike duel or running chase is never far away, and Ahsoka regularly shows off her cool trick of fighting with her lightsaber, held in a reverse grip. A fact-finding trip to a bustling port, meanwhile, lends the action a bit of Andor-esque insight into how fighting fascism is a never-ending struggle, when it becomes apparent that, although the Empire no longer runs the GAF, not everyone who runs it has seen the light. The foundations are in place, then, if the show can remember, Star Wars at its best is snappy and fun, not slow and serious. There's another lost opportunity in the form of Huyang, a droid voiced by David Tennant, reprising his role from Clone Wars. He enjoys making the robots sound like a caring but fussy butler, with notes of P.G. Wodehouse's Jeeves and Red Dwarf's Crichton. But in a show where, when a scene needs to establish a thing, the characters often stand there directly, dryly discussing that thing, show don't tell is another writing rule that hasn't survived the trip across the cosmos. Tennant is often left trying to say unfunny lines in a funny voice. Like everything in Ahsoka, he could be so much better if he were allowed to cut loose and entertain us. For many, love for the franchise had been dwindling with some of the more lackluster installments. Their interest was piqued again when The Mandalorian came out. Many may have really enjoyed the first season, and the second season was downright fantastic. But what we love most about it is what the show unleashed. It brought forth the current age of Star Wars right here on our streaming devices. This new era, somewhere between sequels and prequels, depending on how you squint at it, felt like it was finally getting on track with what modern Star Wars should be. If Disney had to go through the growing pains of releasing the sequel trilogy to get to this point, well, we think it was probably worth it to get the franchise into the masterful hands of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. The former also ushered us into the modern Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the latter is George Lucas' own Padawan, and both seem to be destined to bring us excellent Star Wars. The Mandalorian, and by extension, Book of Boba Fett, brought back the wonder of the galaxy far, far away from me. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Andor brought continuations of favorite characters into the very compelling era between the prequels and sequels. Clone Wars came back for a final season and even got a spin-off. Star Wars finally felt like it was hitting its stride, the stride that I've been hoping for ever since Disney made a deal with George Lucas to buy the rights. But there was still something missing for me. While I loved everything I was watching, I still hadn't seen that one thing to return me to being the superfan that I'd been as a kid, the one who not only enjoyed the movies but the extended universe, read, legends, that came from it. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it entertaining, then don't forget to hit that like button below. And if you want to stay updated with more great content like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the red button and just ringing the notification bell so you never missed any future content from us. Your support means the world.